My God, I have so many friends. Like 1,506. Oh my God, another friend request. They're from China, except
we have superficial relationships that sometimes we think are more like we get married, and we have the people around us that we see every day, and we're like, oh, they really are good friends. Well, I hate to break it to you, but no, we can't ever breach our isolation. Okay, I'm going to start with the first novel we read in my high school English class. It's called Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, and my overarching question is, how does fear act as a barrier? I think the biggest scene we see Holden really trying to get away from any kind of comfort is his scene with Mr. Antolini. During that whole time, he calls this man in the middle of the night, and he goes there, and the man opens his house to him, his wife opens the house to him, and when he's sleeping on the couch, he wakes up and Antolini's stroking his head. Despite the fact that that's really weird and that probably shouldn't have happened, Holden can't take any kind of kindness. He doesn't give the man a chance to explain because his fear causes him to run out before even trying to expose any insecurities that he might have about himself. We also see Holden in chapter 13, after he leaves from this bar, he goes into his hotel where he's staying after he ran away from school, and he talks to this man, and he hires a prostitute. And, he's kind of excited, sexuality in this book is definitely kind of that bridge to, one of the bridges to adulthood, and as soon as the prostitute comes in, Holden reverts to being a child. Even though he's almost an adult, he has this fear of being close with anyone, and even though it's a prostitute, he still can't manage to get past his childish innocence and loses virginity, which he can't lose because if he loses his virginity, he's no longer able to embody all of the characteristics that he wishes he could embody. Overall, Holden is afraid of growing up and making adult connections. Being caught between adulthood and childhood is hazardous to his character, and we see that because as the novel goes on, he gets a little more and more kind of crazy. He does weirder things, he tries scrubbing out things that you can't, and all of that stuff. Holden overall, he can never breach his isolation because he can never breach into the adult world to even attempt to do so. For the second novel we read in English, it was A Step of Peace by John Rawls, and my overarching question for that is, how does ignorance aid to our isolation? The entire novel is about these two boys who have a really complicated friendship unbeknownst to one of the boys. His name is Finney, and the more jaded, kind of hateful guy, his name is Gene. And even though Gene has this knowledge of his hatred and his jealousy for Finney, because obviously Finney embodies everything that's childish and innocent and good and natural, he also has some of his ignorance, and readers see that. Finney's ignorance to Gene's jealousy is what really kind of makes the whole novel possible. He doesn't realize that his so-called best friend is jealous of him and tries to compete with him in every aspect, even though Finney does not have the same kind of emotions towards Gene because he's so much more innocent and so much more ignorant than him. He doesn't know the people around him like he should. He's kind of an older teenage boy, but he still can't leave childhood, because once he leaves childhood, he has to deal with the war and everything that's going on around him. When Gene breaks Finney's leg, after they jumped out of the tree, well, after Gene pushed Finney out of the tree, Finney can't process that. Later, when Gene actually tells him, it actually kills him. So we see ignorance as this kind of completely isolating thing, and then the fact that if you're completely ignorant to everyone around you in every situation and refuse to open your eyes to the acknowledgement, or when you do, you die because of how ignorant you were. In Night by Elie Wiesel, it's a true story about the Holocaust and his experiences as a young boy. And my question for this book is isolation a protective device, and how does it work as such? I'm just going to focus on two major things. People like Eli, who did have a kind of detachment from everyone, an isolation of sorts, and people who tried to rely on others, and how those two turned out. We see Ellie in the beginning. He's very well-rounded. He's close to his family. He loves people around him. But as these horrors are struck upon him, you know, seeing people's deaths, seeing children's deaths, smelling all of the things that he smelled, like burning people, he's morphed into kind of this detached person because he doesn't have any other way to process it. As a result, his father, who he ends up being stuck with, he is no longer attached to his father, and as his father dies, he still goes on. He's not affected by it as deeply as other people are, and he lives through the Holocaust, and we see this time after time. The ones who are detached are the ones who live, so isolation protects us as a sword. Our fourth text was As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. My question for this text was, are we our own biggest barrier to breaking isolation? As I Lay Dying is about this lower-class family named the Bundrins, and they're all stuck together in this weird hodgepodge kind of family that they don't really like each other, but they have to be with each other because of the way society dictates itself in their lives. The character that I'm going to focus on is Darl Bundren. He's the second oldest of the Bundren family, and he's the smartest, but along with being the smartest, he is definitely probably the fakest one of all of the characters. He comes off as one completely different thing, and in his head, because we can see into his head, he is a completely different thing. He's brilliant, and he has all these profound thoughts, and he's trying to figure out these life questions that we're not really supposed to be able to find. And with his questions and his dealings inside of his own mind, he actually goes crazy, and as a character, he just completely diminishes, because by the time he has an answer, it's too late, and he's already insane. Another one of our texts was A Good Man is Hard to Find by O'Connor. My question about this short story is, do our misconceptions about life make us happier, or do they just hinder us? The grandmother in this story, she's kind of a bitter, fake old woman who is entirely based on images. She wants to present herself as a lady. She doesn't really care about her family. She has these conceptions about people, that they're good, or that they'll be nice to her just because she is an elderly lady and she's only concerned for herself. Her misconceptions about life did not bring her happiness, because when the misfit, the serial killer in the story, pulls up beside her, she literally knows that her family is dying. Maybe not on a conscious level, but when they don't come back from the woods, the readers know they're dead. And she keeps telling the main killer that he's a good man, that he was raised by good people, and in the end she dies. And the author just shows us that it isn't until we die that we realize that maybe we were wrong about everything that we knew. The last novel we read was Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, and my question for this novel was, is it ever possible to be alone in our isolation? And I'm going to say no, because with this novel, the main character, his name is Billy, he's always trying to escape situations, like whenever he was with his wife on his honeymoon and she started bringing up the war, he tried to run away by going to the bathroom, and he only ended up time traveling to another war memory. And he's always surrounded by people, but the readers get the sense of detachment from himself, and you know that he's isolated because of the fact that he never has any particularly strong feelings toward any one character, but he can't ever be alone because he always time travels to different places where there's other people watching him, like on the Trout Matador, and when he's viewed as a zoo animal, he's never going to be alone, and he'll always be viewed by the people around him.